Hi, everyone. This is Keith Stone again with the Center for Hellenic Studies for another informal discussion with, as usual, Greg and
Hi.
Sarah from our community as well. And we want to talk about this very lovely question, Greg, that you posed to the members of the community, which I'm going to read. As we read through all the interactions of Penelope with the disguised Odysseus, we have to ask ourselves, why does it take her so long to be sure that this stranger is really her long-lost husband? Do you have your own answer?
I think we got some of the best responses we've ever received. And I'm just so gratified, so happy, just plain happy that people felt empowered to engage and go beyond the immediate interpretation and look for the long-term analysis. And I think it helped when I said, why did it take her so long? And I was, you know what I was thinking about, Sarah and Keith? I was thinking about Russian novels where recognition scenes might happen a little bit sooner. And it seems so strange to us moderns, I think, that whereas some characters recognize Odysseus pretty soon, other characters like Penelope seem to take a long time. And I like to think, well, they've been separated for 20 years, for heaven's sake. So to reconstruct a relationship after 20 years isn't going to happen overnight.
And that's a much more complex relationship and closer relationship than Odysseus had with Eumaeus, the swineherd, or Argos the dog, or...
Well, that's the easiest one. The dog is definitely up there as a less complicated decipherer of Odysseus than the wife or the father. And isn't it interesting that the Odyssey saves the father for last? It's for us moderns almost an anticlimax, but there's a logic to that too. That the father, shall we say, takes so long in terms of how long the Odyssey takes to get to that recognition scene. But the psychological implications of all these interactions between Penelope and Odysseus, and it just goes on and on and on, and we don't get released from the tension of, well, when are they going to actually, in the modern sense, recognize each other?
Yeah, tension is a great word. And then we're like, oh, Laertes, his father, we forgot about him. That is
yes.
So it seems to me that there's like a kind of an ebb and flow, almost like Odysseus' own journey, that they're moving towards a record, and then they kind of don't quite get there, and then they come back from it again.
Yes. It's kind of like a tease, isn't it, Sarah? And I like the fact that one of our respondents used sort of thought about it in terms of enjoying this kind of prolongation of that delicious moment when there's total recognition. It's almost savoring something that will happen. And there is, and I think not just one, but several of our respondents pointed out there's a kind of playfulness to it.
Yeah, totally agreed. Because
they've also been talking about the craftiness, the cleverness of both Penelope and Odysseus, and the relationship between them.
Yes,
that's why there can be this play, because they're equals, as people have pointed out.
They're really equal mentally, and that's so beautiful. Especially, I don't know, I'm now so into this character of Dorothea in George Eliot's Middlemarch, and how she is excluded from the intellectual life of Mr. Edward Casaubon, or the exclusion of Maggie in what is it, Mill on the Floss, from learning Latin, and Virginia Woolf certainly picked up on it. And so here's a woman, Penelope, who is 50-50 intellectually with Odysseus. Their social roles may be different because of the strict delineation of what women and men do publicly in society. So that's another matter, and we certainly don't need to approve of the rather strict divisions of roles in between men and women as represented in this medium. So I don't approve of that, but certainly everybody would admit that Penelope, let me say it in colloquial English, is just as smart as Odysseus is.
And some of the same sort of language is used about them as well. One of our participants picked up on the word stratagem, used of Penelope, but also of Odysseus.
Oh, I so agree, and I, of course, there are special womanly ways of expressing certain kinds of cleverness, like cleverness in weaving, and just the ability to unweave what you wove the day before, and there are other sort of gender-specific ways that we see Penelope's intelligence. But when all is said and done, they are, to repeat that colloquial expression, they're both 50-50 smart.
We talk about this comment where, and this goes to the question of their complementarity as well. Someone points out, and I'll just read this, I believe that the main reason that Penelope takes so long to recognize Odysseus is the blurring of her mind by Athena.
Yes.
Meditation, who sends repeatedly.
Yes.
That makes her lose consciousness. And
I love that.
Of Odysseus before, in my experience with you, Greg. But what about the sleep of Penelope? What do you make?
Yes.
That double.
I just find that blurring followed by clarification, this kind of mental trajectory that Penelope experiences in sometimes very parallel ways to the way Odysseus experiences blurring, again a sign of her great intelligence, her, to use the Greek word metis. And I like the fact that this blurring effect, one of our respondents actually tied it in with a specific passage where Athena, the goddess of intelligence, sends upon Penelope a sweet sleep. This is in scroll 19, and again in scrolls 21 and 23. So I love the way Dimitra 13 mentioned that.
In terms of the losing of consciousness or noos, with Odysseus, we've talked about how it is kind of an allegory of death and then rebirth as he finds noos again. And it maps also onto this loss of orientation in space.
Yes.
And reorientation. Would you say, or I don't know, let's just talk about that for a second. Are those things true of Penelope in some way? This metaphorical death and rebirth, or this geographic?
I think it is, and I think you're picking up on it, dear Keith, and so is in a way Dimitra 13. That, in a sense, to understand consciousness, you have to be able to realize what the difference is between not being conscious and being conscious. So the oscillation between the two, and that's certainly something that that Penelope herself experiences, and even the way Penelope subjectively thinks of Odysseus as belonging to her. That's something that Melody pointed out. She is really part of him, just as he is part of her. And I thought that was a very interesting thing. Melody says, trickster husband, but there's a trickster wife as well.
I wonder if, well, this is something that I just thought. Penelope maybe can't recognize Odysseus, the kind of allegorically resurrected version of Odysseus, if she herself doesn't go through death and rebirth. And I would say that could be true insofar as Penelope would be a model for worshipers. They can't recognize the hero truly, can't truly recognize the hero until they've been initiated, until they've gone through a mystical experience.
Yes, yes. Although I'd have to think long and hard about whether there is a kind of rejuvenation phase for Penelope as well. I suppose it's built into the scene where the final reunion happens. Maybe it's not quite as explicit as it is for Odysseus, but I'll have to think some more about that. I'll have to think long and hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You talked about waking up as being, after a sleep, as being related to that return,
yes.
Return to life and light in a way.
I think so. I think there's something rejuvenating right there. And I think the fact that there's so much emphasis on their being notionally remarried to each other, I think that already is a kind of climactic way of capturing a moment of the original bride and the original bridegroom, so to speak. So it's a kind of a rejuvenation just by virtue of being a remarriage, as it were.
Yeah, and one of our participants is talking about those proofs derived from intimate knowledge, but then also thinking about the word sema, which
yes.
Has is used so much, and we're used to that as referring to the sign of maybe of a tomb of a cult hero, but
yes.
also a sign maybe on this side of life rather than the after death. Just as we've been looking at Olbios, which has got the two meanings depending on which way you're looking at it, and yet as readers or as maybe the participants listening to the ritual performance originally,
yes.
they are experiencing that sort of connection as well, and whether the signs are an important aspect of this. What do you think?
I think the point that you made, Sarah, about the sign, and then when somebody gets it, the firing of the synapse, as it were, to try to be neurological about it, I think it's so much there. It's so there. And you know, I think of Aristotle's definition of recognition. Now, of course, the old man there is thinking about recognition scenes in tragedy, so he's not really thinking about the Odyssey, I'm sure of that. But I love the way he says that recognition happens when you slowly get to feel more and more familiar with somebody until you realize, oh, this is somebody who's part of me. And then click, that's the recognition. But of course, Aristotle being Aristotle, he also has the opposite, where you think you love somebody and then you get farther and farther and farther away, and then suddenly click, you realize that you're alienated, that it's somebody that you're not. And I think of that horrible scene in the Stanley Kubrick film The Shining, where the Shelley Duvall figure finally realizes that the Jack Nicholson figure is not who she thought he was. And there is then instantaneous alienation. So it's kind of the opposite of the kind of recognition that we see in the Odyssey. So there are positive and negative sides, Aristotle would say, of recognition. But it's definitely, as you say, dear Sarah, a question of tuning into a sign, and then the sign, shall we say, goes on or is turned on, and then you have bingo, recognition of being part of somebody else's identity and vice versa.
That reminds me of what you just said, Greg, of the recognition scene that the suitors go through with Odysseus.
Oh, yes.
They miss a bunch of signs.
Yes.
Moments when there's a quick conversation between Telemachus and Odysseus, or that kind of thing. I don't remember the details specifically, but there are little parts where the American narrator, tells us something like Odysseus is doing something as himself. With
I love it.
The readers are just oblivious, but then they have this horrifying recognition scene when this beggar is not to be who they thought he was.
And you know, I think of that lovely English expression. I don't know whether it has any literary origins. I bet Sarah will know if there are. But when we say in English, my blood runs cold, it's when you have this total recognition negatively, and then it's all over.
Yeah, it turned out pretty badly for this.
Yeah, pretty badly. But to go back to the positive side, what I love about the Odyssey is that a true recognition on the positive side is so exhilaratingly pleasurable. And I go back to something that more than one of our participants noticed, that there's something not only playful but almost enjoyable about how long it takes. So going back to Greg's original question, why does it take her so long? I think it's partly the pleasure of the verbal art. That's why it takes so long.
Yeah, I like that. It makes me think of the awkwardness in sitcoms when everyone knows something that one character doesn't know. Like,
yes, yes, yes.
But it's this drawing out of the feeling. In that case, suspense, where's suspense?
Yes, yes.
We go.
Well, somehow we have to duplicate the question that I asked for this particular occasion, because I so enjoyed the outpouring of creativity that we got from our participants. What do you think, Sarah and Keith?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful question, because there are so many stages to this recognition, and so each of those stages has so much to offer and so many things to think about. As our participants have been finding, and each time I think about it, and each time I read these replies and reread the text, I'm kind of seeing different things in it. So I hope that our viewers and our HeroesX participants will keep thinking about it and keep talking about it, because it's so rich.
Beautiful.
It's a wonderful closing. I'm not going to try to top that. So thanks for joining me, Greg and Sarah, and see you next time.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Sarah. Till the next time, everyone. Bye.
Bye now.